Spoken I haven't thought about flying for a long time. I haven't dreamed of that moment when I was alone above the clouds for a long time. I haven't dreamed of waking up in a room surrounded in blue and green grass for more years than I could dream of remembering. I haven't walked back into the past or scratched on the doors of my origins, where it all came from, since I held up that cape for the last time.
Return to Cape Town 10th Year Anniversary Edition is a revised version of Andy N's first poetry book. The book can be purchased from Amazon and it contains numerous additional material.
Spoken Label.
You wake up one morning after not reading a book since your school days and you decide to be a writer. With no good or bad writing to compare against your own. You just know how to write and anyone who tells you otherwise is wrong. Hell, maybe they're jealous of your natural ability to craft the masterpiece. After all, most people need to learn through a combination of books, courses, critical feedback and workshops. Not you though. It's not their fault they don't realise your natural talent, but they soon will.
How to Write Wrong is the new book by Amanda Steele. The book, which is an interactive story, gives the reader multiple options throughout its story. The book can be purchased from Amazon. Spoken Label. Thank you today for tuning in to Spoken Label. Spoken Label was originally set up at the beginning of 2016 and as of recording has over 200 sessions in our archive. Although the podcast can be heard on Anchor, iTunes, Apple, Spotify, YouTube and literally 10 or 11 other networks, the full archive can be found at Spoken Label, all one word, spokenlabel.bandcamp.com. On Bandcamp, it is set as pay what you want, so you are entitled, if you wish, you can download it or stream it for nothing. But if you throw me a couple of pennies my way, it is always eternally grateful to help me maintain the operating costs and future running costs of this podcast. Enjoy. Spoken Label. Hi guys, Andy N, Spoken Label, back in the house and back on Zoom again tonight. And I've got a recurring friend of me today as well, because it's always good when I do Spoken Label. I like to nowadays, because it's been going for a few years, every now and then we get back to catch up with a friend from the past. And the lady we've got with us today, we've just been working this one out, Sarah, haven't we? And we talked on, what, about April 2018, wasn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's been good fun because I want to talk to you about, she's got a really interesting project out today, so that's why I want to do a special podcast on that. But Sarah, before we start, obviously introduce yourself to everybody, tell them who you are and a quick overview, and then we'll talk about your project in a bit.
Right. Thanks, Andy, and thank you for having me back on. Yeah, I'm a poet, fiction writer, journalist and photographer. I write as both Sarah James and Sarah Leavesley, which
confuses the heck out of me because I want to see always on
because otherwise people get a lot of confusion when they suddenly find me in one name and then another name. But I like dabbling with poetry, film, audio, pretty much anything creative, and I like something new. So
yeah, I know exactly. Like you've done, what is it, 4 full poetry collections, haven't you? And 3 pamphlets or something around that territory, isn't it?
Yeah.
As far as I can remember, 2 novellas as well, unless you've done something else I don't know about.
Yeah, the 2 novellas, and I kind of I have a poetry play, but the words are mine, but actually a lot of that is also to do with the director and the actress that I had working with me on it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because they took it on tour and it did develop through their input when it was touring, but that was great fun.
Oh yeah, completely. That's something completely different, isn't it? So it doesn't surprise me knowing you, Sarah. Like, if and everyone knows you, you do all kinds of things. Like it was, and I love looking at the fact here, like just looking at your bio on your website. I'm a bit lazy. Like it was, I'd forgotten that you got shortlisted, didn't you, in the Gatehouse Press New Fictions Prize 2015-16.
I did.
You won the Oxford Today. Get the teeth out now. Oxford Today for the Thrash competition in 2014. That's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah, thriller and flash.
Yeah.
See, I can't do it now. I'll turn it into Thrash instead of Flash, which is not what the story was. But yeah, no, I've dabbled in different things, had some luck along the way, had lots of support from people as well. So
Yeah.
that's how.
Before we go on to your main project, the room, I want to ask you about, because I noticed here, you were a resident artist for the High Window last year, which has come obviously after we originally chatted that I didn't know about. And tell us a bit about that then.
That was just because I like photography, and I've taken photos for a while. But then, you know, most of us take photos. It's what we do. We have cameras and we take photos. So I like playing with them creatively, but I'm not a technical photographer, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You know, it's more a case with me of thinking that looks nice and then taking 50 shots in the hope that one will turn out to be the one that feels how I want it. So, and it was just completely out of the blue to be... I can't even remember exactly how it had happened. I think I was working with combining photos with short, almost haiku-esque poems. So really, really short poems, so that they can be used on social media quite easily, rather than having a long poem. David asked me if I'd be the High Window resident artist. I was like. So it was, you know, really lovely and a great opportunity and big confidence boost actually to try a bit more with photography. And I did some of the photo poem combinations. I also did for one issue, I created like photos that I felt would go with 4 of the poems. So they were involving collage and, you know, using multiple photos together to create an effect that I felt in some way matched the poem, other people's poems. Yeah, it was fun.
No, it does. I think as artists, I'm always a firm believer. Like you said already, it's great you're trying other projects all the time and stuff that. I think when you're creative, you can try your hand to nearly anything, can't you? And like that case there, like it give you a new challenge, something completely different, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been lucky. I mean, collaboration's a great thing. If you get a chance to collaborate with people, like with poetry film, I've been lucky to collaborate with some really good filmmakers. So I kind of pick up tricks from them in that process, even though I'm on board as a writer. And, you know, in all fairness, I have quite a few much stronger photographer friends who've shared tips with me and advice and, you know, things that have helped me to improve what I'm doing with my work.
Yeah, of course. No, I do. I think those sort of cross collaboration, you always get something from that anyway. So no matter what you do, you learn something from it. You're great. Now, what we're here today to talk about is your new project, aren't we? Which obviously, like you said, your new project, Room, which is a multi-poetry narrative. Now, what's really interested me about this, because I didn't know you were actually diabetic. That's why, because I'm like, we both said off mic, I'm diabetic as well. So, what led you to start this project off, Room then?
It came together in multiple different ways. I mean, I have historically not written anything at all or very little about my diabetes. I grew up with it being kind of pretend to be normal, pretend it's not there almost. So
did you get it when you were a child and did you really yourself?
I was 6 when I was diagnosed. So yeah, I mean I've grown up with it to the extent that although I'm not diabetes, I'm not my disability, there is no way it couldn't help shape the person I've become because it was there in my formative years. And I actually read, I don't know if you've read it or seen it, the Nine Arches did an anthology. Now I'm going to remember the name wrong. Staircase and Whispers, or Whispers and Staircase.
And it was now. Staircase and Whispers. Is that about diabetes?
No, it was poets with all sorts of disabilities or experience of different disabilities. I think they got some deaf poets. people with all sorts of disabilities, whether they're physical disabilities or more mental disabilities, or I don't like using that word, because actually when you go and read that book, they are just so amazingly creative and so amazingly strong pieces in there. And I guess that maybe allowed me to start thinking about the fact that actually diabetes wasn't just something that I could flick away. It actually is a lot bigger than I'd allowed it space to be, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. It does for that myself. Like I've had it for 10 years now, or 9.5 years, and I've not really wrote anything about it yet. I've had things in the background and pieces, but never directly touched it. So that's why I was respect you. It took you, like you said, even longer than me to confront it, really, didn't you? So
yeah, and that's what happened. Then I started thinking, well, okay, it's okay to write about it. Maybe there's even something useful or positive about writing from that point of view and about that. And I guess maybe there's the kind of, you get to a certain age and you're sort of working out where your life is, what it's all been about, who you are as a person, that kind of stuff. And it all fits in with that. So I started actually writing about it. And also because Room is a multimedia project. So it's got photography and animations created using photos in it. Part of that was actually looking also physically. My mum always used to talk about the fact that before I was diagnosed, with hindsight, you could tell because my face was so thin and sunken in. And if you look at the year photos, before diagnosis, at diagnosis, and then once I was actually being treated, you could see my face, but only in hindsight.
Is it hereditary in your family, the diabetes, or was it just
well, I don't always keep up with the research. I think as far as I'm aware, the latest on it is that it's likely that I have a weakness, shall we say, an inherited weakness. Then I got a virus, just like a cold virus, but rather than it clearing up afterwards, it triggered my body to go into extra white cell production and to start attacking itself.
And
attacking the pancreas, and so there is a hereditary element in it. My grandfather had diabetes. He was 18 when he was diagnosed, but he lived with us as a teenager, and he actually he had complications and he lost his sight and his one of his legs from gangrene. So
nasty. It's in my case, it was worse than yours because I collapsed it at work. I had no inklings of it at all. Now, at the time, I had burnt myself out. I overdid it. But my dad's got it. He got it at 60. My dad's 85 now. And we found, and my mum and dad never told me about this. This is common knowledge, that I didn't know until after I got it that my mum's dad had it. He died after that too, so I don't remember him. And I thought, as soon as I found that one out, I thought, he doesn't know straight away. It's on both sides of your family. I thought. So, and then that terrified my younger brother. My brother's now got it as well, so he got it when he was younger than me, so younger I got it. So what he does is he makes you change your full life. And that's your case. You've had it all your life, then, really, haven't you? So that's why.
I can't remember before. Before then.
Completely. Now, obviously, with the room, then, I know it's been the project's been. You tell me off, Mike, it's been going for a while. This project, hasn't it? So did the poems take quite a while to come together? Because is it 40 odd poems or something, isn't it?
There's as many. I'm going to say there's as many rooms as my age.
Oh yeah, right. Well, 21 then, basically. Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I should probably say that some of the poems are directly related to what the diagnosis was like, and specific in mentioning the diabetes, but many of them are about everyday life but through the viewpoint of what I call the 6-year-old traumatist, which is the viewpoint of that terrified 6-year-old, which obviously I'm not anymore, but some element of that kind of 6-year-old reaction to what happened is part of my personality still, even as an adult, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, of course.
So some of it's been about 3, 4, maybe 5 years that I've been working on them all together. And a lot of them you write them, then you kind of come back to them and they change because you edit them and maybe mess with the order and what goes where, that kind of thing. And that was just, it was all on the page only, with the room kind of being a box-like shape on the page with a poem around it, and then the title for each poem inside the room, which I think in my head is the sense of both being trapped in the limits that having Jesus placed on me, but also to some extent being trapped outside of a normal world slightly. A sense of maybe living life at a distance, which I think is a reaction to childhood diagnosis and not knowing how to cope with it.
Yeah. No, completely agree. That's why I find it really interesting, isn't it? It said it's took you so long to write the project. Did you look back at it now and think yourself it's gone a completely different direction to what you originally envisaged it as?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I mean, for a start, it being online is completely a different way to what I'd intended. I'd intended it on the page, and then I got emergency funding from Arts Council England to turn it into a hypertext narrative where people can click on links in the poetry text, and that takes them to a different room. And actually that, I've played with hypertext poetry and poetry film and photography, as we've talked about already before. So it wasn't kind of not there. It was, that idea, I suppose, and that potential was always there, but there was no real reason to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And that gave me a reason to do it. And actually now it kind of feels really right, because to some extent, for me at any rate, the notion of there being multiple routes through it, and of readers having some control in that they click on a link and it takes them to a room, but actually they don't know where that room's going to be or what's going to be in that room, which to some extent for me is a bit like living with diabetes. You have certain things that are supposed to work and should be what you do in certain circumstances. You take extra insulin to bring your blood sugar down, or you exercise, you take food if your blood sugar's low, that kind of thing. But they don't always actually turn out the way you expect them to turn out, unexpected.
I've had that before now, I've had that before now. When I got up the first thing in the morning, collapsed. And in my case, I was with my ex, actually, I remember as well, because she had a Bengal cat, and I don't know what you know about cats. That cat was psychic nearly to her. And I collapsed in front of the cat at 6 o'clock in the morning. The cat went and woke his mum up, my ex. And it was sat in the mother's face, yarking her, tapping her on the face for about 10 minutes when she woke up. Because they're very like dogs, they are. And then she twigged eventually that I was on the floor, passed out. So, but you do it's diabetes, you don't know what you're going to get from day to day, and that's why. And that's why this your project here, that you take in different rooms, is different elements of the way your life could be and how to be diabetic. We're going on the website itself. So, was it quite a long process to actually design it onto the website, the programming side of it?
If I'd been starting from scratch and never done anything like it before, it would have been. Because I've done stuff like it before, and of course the poems were already written, it was just a question of putting them onto the website. So copying and pasting across and doing a bit of formatting to get it to go right, and creating the images and adding the audio. And then I plotted out which rooms were going to link to which. And then I had to go through and manually make sure that the links were in the right places and do that. It took me about a week of solid work to put all of that together.
I can believe that, because I know Amanda's just done this. I don't know if you've seen this. She's done a Choose Your Own Adventure book, and she did it as a Kindle, and she had to format everything to be like it went from one page to the next on the Kindle like that. And if you've not done that sort of thing for Amanda, I think I did it before. So but that was a challenge itself. It isn't very similar to that. You've got to treble check everything works properly, haven't you? So.
Well, I did have a few beta readers as well when I'd done it, and the front page in particular, I changed things on it because of feedback from my beta readers, because the links are only in the text, they're not on the photos, and something that became obvious to me with the first test runs from friends was that actually there was tendency sometimes for people to try and click on particularly the door, because there's a door picture on the front page, and to click on that, and of course there's no link on the photos, so that was a little bit of extra coding that was new to me. So it now pops up a little window which says please click on the text, so the little bits like that, but afterwards as well, getting other people to double check them to make sure.
Yeah, of course, you do best checks. Oh, that's brilliant. That. Do you have any ideas where you want this project to go next then? Is it going to, do you reckon, could you take it any further now? Or is it going to be like one of the book, maybe?
I would like to, because all of the poems in the room are in the third person from the 6-year-old traumatist point of view. And I do have some other poems that are in the first person, which are less stream of consciousness, more kind of crafted poems about living with diabetes, if that makes sense, rather than crafted stream of consciousness. So yeah, I would like potentially to try and find a publisher for it at some point, and get the whole thing out that way, rather than just I really like the multimedia and the hypertext links, but in most cases people will find a route through without going in all the rooms, and it would be possible for someone to visit all the rooms, but I think they'd have to sit down and note down each choice they make each time, if you know what I mean.
I spent about a good hour, 2 times I've done it, I've spent a couple of hours on it in total, and I found it really fascinating, because I'm very the way I am. I'll do it one way, then on the second time I'll go deliberately go the opposite way, and it was fascinating. Really, I've never done anything like that before. Actually, it really was a fascinating project. So, brilliant. Have you anything else on the go project-wise at the moment you want to reveal to people? Or is it top secret?
No, you know that superstition about tempting fate. I mean, I've been working on a novel in Flash. Which has been good fun.
Yeah. Everyone still see my reaction like, wow, good luck.
Well, I like working. I mean, at the moment it's finished. It is finished in the stage that I think it's finished. Though I do know that sometimes, particularly with book projects, after a while you'll think, oh, but actually there was a strand there that I could have developed more. Yeah. So I'm not going to say it's. But I like working in the Flash form, because there are the gaps between leave a lot more space for the reader to be involved with, and joining the dots, I suppose, is the phrase they typically use. But so that there's a lot of room for reader imagination as well. It's not telling every little bit of everything that happens. So that's been, and I find that a really interesting way to write as well, because there's a lot of space for not necessarily working in chronological order, for getting your idea of the story and that story then, and then kind of more flashes to join those bits together, which then create new threads sometimes, tie off other threads. And I think for me, there is a certain reward in working in a Flash form, in that if the whole book fails, I still have 80 odd different individual Flash stories.
Like it. I've done that over a couple of years in Appawino, National Poetry Writing Month. And what I did was, about 6 years ago, I did a 30-part poetry sequence on a supernatural story. And I enjoyed it that much. I did the second part, and I've done 5 parts of it now. I've got to sit down and get it all sorted out in the book. And I've been about 170 odd short poems. So I've got that sort of summer to you, and it's been. You do that sort of challenge, it's just something completely off the mad base of it works. Oh, okay, Sarah. Now, if people want to find out more about you, I know you've got a website. So, is the website the best place for people to go to read up on you?
Absolutely, and that's where they'll find the room as well.
Yeah, of course. The website is sarah-james.co.uk, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I thought I'd make sure on the right Sarah James page. Well, we might look. I'll stop sending some porn star or something, right?
I think the co.uk is probably quite important as well. I think them is a sarahjames.com, which is not me.
Yeah, no, when we stated that, and I apologise, I don't think she's a porn star, right? So, right, Sarah, great stuff. Now, we're going to take a quick break. So I know you're going to do some poems for us next, aren't you? And we're going to do this in a slightly unorthodox way. So everybody's interested is going to have to come back and watch. It's going to be something very different today. So thank you again, Sarah. It's been a pleasure as always. So
thank you.
See you all in a minute, guys.
Thank you.
Spoken, mate. Hi, guys. Okay. Now this is very unorthodox what we're doing here today, because what Sarah's got set up on her poems. Do you want to tell people, Sarah, what you're going to get me to help you out with in a minute? I'm your willing assistant here.
Yeah, I'm going to make Andy take all the blame if you don't like the poems that I read, because I'm going to make him give me page numbers, and then I shall read the poem on that page, assuming I've given him the right page numbers and there is a poem on that page. If not, you might get the nearest one to it instead.
Yeah, we're not right now. Okay, what numbers have we got to cover, Sarah, between them?
Between 6 and 90.
I mean, it's more than I realised it was. Okay.
They're not all from the room, they're from the longer manuscript. So.
Okay, we'll start off with the first number then, number 6.
6. Diagnosis. Diabetes. Every time the room writes the word, she scratches it out. The room re-spells it on and loosed. Letters bounce their sound around the walls. They fill the room, her brain, her heart. Her life becomes a secret echo box. What was and what might have been, locked in with what is, howling constantly at a pitch so shrill no one else can hear it. Decades later, she still winces.
Brilliant. Okay, right. I'm trying to think now. It says 6 to 9. Pardon me, 6 to 90. You said, didn't you? So
yeah.
Right, so we're going to do 4 then. I think we'll move the narrative on. Should we say my age, 21?
21.
And your age is not 21. Our age.
Good age. Okay, this is slightly surreal. The Ark as hypotheses go, it's perhaps her most unusual. The Ark as a bestiary, her room as rain gauge spilling over to fill the house with water, barking, and a dodo's squawking. But wait, a rain gauge with windows and door? The room can't be the Ark because there's only her in it. The beasts roar from inside her. Yet, if animal hooves are hammering her chest, then the Ark must be her heart. And though her heart is wooden, it's more an ale-drained cask tipped to its side, tap open. As mouths slurp the last dregs, she notices the slap and slosh of liquid at her feet. She dips a finger in, raises it to taste. Salt stings. Brine starts to crust her lip. The carpet now is soaking. Fish fins brush her calf. The ocean level is rising fast. She's awash up to her coral knees, and the bed's a lone island. Cushions float past, slowly sinking to join her sodden slippers. But if her room's the flood and she still can't decide a working arc, what use Noah when non-stop files of noisy stompers are herded like refugees beneath a single leaking roof? She'd settle for a dove, a sprig of something green and unwilting.
Yeah, that is surreal. No, but I mean, wouldn't know it was Sarah who come to my writing workshop last couple of times, and I'm kind of used to the way Sarah goes. She's capable of doing some very surreal things, and that's surreal. Okay.
Yeah, a bit of global warming, climate warming coming in there.
We'll jump straight onto my age now then, which I'm going to admit to is 48, page 48.
Okay. Oh, this isn't one that's actually this. Hopefully you like it. This isn't one that's in the room. It's one of the diabetes-related poems that's in the longer manuscript, which is of a more untainted by the 6-year-old traumatist viewpoint, if you like. And it has an epigram or epigraph for it, a kind of quote that comes with it, which shows some signs of Asperger's or shy avoidant personality. People scare me because they're like milk bottles on winter doorsteps, contents distanced by glass and frozen to my touch. Even cracked, they're still rigid, opaque, unflowing. If I reach out to grasp one, I might drop it. It wouldn't spill, but slivers cut my fingers, feet, heart. Worse, a fragment could lodge and become part of me. When I step towards them and open my mouth to speak, I'm the bottle of frozen milk. My richest cream is a thick seal, a foil lid welded to me. Cold and slippery, I slide into freefall, broken before I feel the stony path. I cut my own hands, soles, heart, and when I bleed slivers of dirtied glass. When I stop bleeding and peer through glass sharply, I see a world of emptied bottles or bottled empties, alike in the fear of jagged edges and a need for something filling. The tongue's a waxed wick or a petroled fuse of screwed feelings. One lit phrase, and we're makeshift lamps or primed grenades.
Brilliant. Oh yeah, I really like that one. Yeah, brilliant that. Now, I was going to say do the fourth as conclusion, but can I be cheeky and get you to do 5?
Sorry,
I was going to say just do 4. Can you do 5? I thought
I can do 5. Yes, that's
that way. We could take 1 to not the end of it, but closest to the end. So we'll move along a bit then. Okay. So
yeah, that's absolutely fabulous.
Okay, 65. Go on, then. Number 65.
65. I feel like I should know what the bingo terms for these numbers are.
I'm used to bingo. Talk to a dyslexic as well.
Okay. It's called Self-Forgiveness, and it's part of a series of poems. There's one nearer the start, and they kind of use same ideas, but they get changed in the second one from how they were when they first appear. So, self-forgiveness. I will not say I'm sorry, because apologies anticipate a set response. And forgiveness is a mercy that must be strained, like fortune-telling tea or the worst fates that might otherwise be revealed. It must be wrung like dirty water from a dishcloth, falling back in drops closer to blackness than gentle rain or dew. And yes, it's true that perhaps I've come to love this fault that I hate most, not for the disability, but through accepting that without it, what little would remain of the me I've come to know.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, I can see, I can well relate to that one. Excellent stuff. Okay, the big conclusion now. Now, I have to ask you a question now. What page number does the last poem start at? It goes up to 90. Is it on 90 the last poem, is it?
No, it isn't.
Don't do that one. Do the one before it then, if that makes sense, right? Stay away from the last one. Do the one before, right? We can use it as a tease then.
It's quite a long one, if that's okay.
Oh, is it? Are you comfortable reading quite a long one out, or are you having a short one?
I'm fine, as long as you are.
I'm
as long
fine,
as you
I'm
and
fine.
the listeners are.
I've got the easy job, right? So everybody knows. I'm the audience, so go for it then, Sarah.
Okay. So it's called Knots. The room is not a transparent cube, cracked stone, or emptied shell. It isn't a hedgehog fossil or a bird box pretending to be a nest. Framed here as anxious symbol, metaphor for depression, the political sidetracked by the personal hijacked by the political, the ultimate all or nothing. Two not negatives do not always make a positive. Three definitely not. Against the odds will always stay odd. By virtue of abstraction, words will always be at odds with truth. However harmonically kaleidoscopic, this dissonance may come to blows. The room itself is not, though, unless she allows it so. When the walls come apart, it's a partnership of woman and metaphysics, of handle and hinges. The door opens, as doors do, except when locked or blocked by force. Even ajar, the thin slice of light shocks her eyes and heart with its dazzle. Perhaps it is what the room has rumoured, that really she prefers the dark, the way it hangs around her, with the promise of a contrast always bolder, brighter and better. If she can't hold light or colour, they can't fade beneath her touch, can't trickle from her fingers. Then at last she gets it, that the whole is itself a sort of hope, and hope a kind of reason that's kinder than any she's known or felt before.
Brilliant. That wasn't that long. I thought you were going to keep me going for 10 minutes then. That's fine.
It links back to quite a few of the other poems, so I'm not. Some of those elements in it maybe aren't, if you haven't read the other poems, that maybe don't resonate in the same way, if that makes sense. And of course, there's a lot of my wordplay dodge from thought to thought on it, but
I thought it made sense there at the end of it to get you to do the second to last one, not the last poem. That way, encourage it that when the book comes out, people will then have to go through a book to get to the last poem to get the conclusion. But I'm always a firm believer that don't do this last chapter, the second to last chapter as the tease.
Leave them wanting more.
Yeah. Best way, but it's been fantastic, Sarah. I've really enjoyed doing that. So it's been a pleasure talking to you again as always. And hopefully we'll catch up in about 18 months' time again with another spoken label session, definitely.
Thank you, it's been great. And yeah, hopefully we'll catch up before then, but maybe not on spoken label.
Who knows? I will say so. Right, I know. Hang around and quick word off mic. That's what I forgot to talk to you about. But thank you again. It's been a pleasure today, Sarah, as always. And this is Andy N. Signing out. Take care, guys and girls. See you all soon. Spoken, mate. Spoken, mate.